Welcome to behavioral ecology. So, in this chapter, we're going to be looking at what influences behaviors. There are two basic mechanisms or things that can affect your behaviors. The first is your genetics. So, what your genes say about you will influence your actual behaviors. The second is your environment. So, how you are raised will influence your behaviors. And so, we're going to look at a couple different research projects or different research that has been done to determine if behavior is influenced more by nature or by nurture. So here we have an example of we have an example of two different types of birds. The Fisher lovebird carries nesting materials in its beak and makes its nest, while the peach-faced lovebird carries nesting material in its rump and then makes its nest. If you cross these two birds, the offspring, the hybrid, will try to tuck materials into its rump, but it doesn't do a good job and the materials will fall out. This is an example, or this supports the nature hypothesis that nature influences behaviors. Here's another nature influences behaviors experiment. If you take garter snakes from different environments, they have a food preference based on their genes. Inland populations will eat fish and frogs, whereas coastal populations will eat slugs. In a laboratory, if you take inland garter snakes and try to feed them slugs, they won't accept them, but the coastal ones will. The hybrids will also accept the slugs. So there is a genetic basis, or again, nature, that influences feeding. And when you get even closer, if you look more at the structure of the organism, their genes code for different receptors. And so the receptors on the coastal garter snakes and on the hybrids actually allow them to taste different foods than on the inland snakes. And this is just showing tongue flicks. The tongue flicks determine how well they will taste different foods. And if we look at humans, and we take twins that were raised in different environments, they still have preferences in foods, preferences in mate selection, and even in activities that they like. So this supports the nature or your genetics influence your behaviors. But the environment does have influence. So environmental influences environmental influences or nurture also affects behaviors. So what you learn will influence your behavior. Learning is a permanent change in behavior because you have had experience with certain things. One learned response is called a fixed action pattern. This is an innate behavior that is encoded for in your genes, but you become better at it. And so here we have pecking. Pecking is an innate behavior, But pecking, initially when you are pecking, you're not going to be very good at getting whatever food you're pecking at. After a couple of days, you become very accurate and you can peck the same spot very effectively. Another learned behavior is imprinting. Imprinting is seeing that first organism and becoming attached to that first organism. And then that is going to be the one that will determine how you grow. And then you have associative learning when you associate a certain stimulus with a response. So classical conditioning is learning where a stimulus elicits a specific response. The best example is Pavlov's dogs. So anytime the dogs received food, they would salivate. So he rang a bell, they rang bells, and whenever dogs got food, and so they associated with the bell with food, and anytime eventually when they rang the bell, the dogs would start salivating without any. Sorry. And so then you also have operant learning. So operant conditioning is learning resulting from a reward or reinforcing a behavior. So training an animal and rewarding it for something that's being done that's correct. Like when a dog sits, they get a treat, or if the dog learns to go potty outside, they get a treat. Operant conditioning. Oh, sorry. Oh my goodness. There we go. So I'm going to stop this video here and I'll pick it up with the next video, okay?